this is my business right now. I'm a tech consultant for underwater, mostly ocean technology, but space too.
Okay.
And I've advised a whole bunch of ocean drone companies, surface, undersea, and there's a whole range of types. The types I owned were oceanographic. So they were long endurance. They're called gliders. So they have a thing called buoyancy propulsion, where they use an air bladder to change basically the buoyancy so it goes up and down, and you throw some wings on it.
Ooh, whoa, that thing's spooky.
Oh, so that's an article I wrote. That's pretty cool. That is the Manta, a DARPA developed ocean drone. Yeah.
DARPA developed ocean drone.
That's right. Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah. That is a badass looking drone. I don't think it's operational, but I'd like it to be. So.
Wow.
Yeah. But and the other piece is a paper, article I wrote on ocean drones, a revolution.
We're turning into the aliens ourselves.
I know, exactly right. That's the interesting conversion. We're not. Are we the origins of all these NHIs, and we're just seeing our relatives?
I think so.
I think we are.
I think so. That's my favorite hypothesis out of all of them, is the time traveler one. I think that's the most compelling one. I know it's hard. I know there's a lot of people to try to debunk it, and there's a lot of questionable holes in it. But goddamn, just with like the history of human beings and our evolution and like the way we're going is like dropping sperm counts, dropping testosterone, fertility rate dropping off a cliff. And are you familiar with Michael Masters, his extraterrestrial hypothesis? Like if you look at all the abduction accounts of taking sperm and eggs from people, if there was some sort of cataclysm in the future, they would want to come back in time to replenish their population in the future with sperms and eggs of people in the past. And goddamn, that's interesting.
Heck yeah. And I tell you, my wife and I, we both are into this topic together. Mm-hmm. And it's an interesting journey we've been on. And I can tell you how it started. But quickly, we would have thought 2 years ago, this is all a bunch of BS. Abductions and all this. But man, now that we've met abductees, and we've read John Mack's book, by the way, which is really heavy, and The Communion by Whitley Strieber, and we've met him. They're documenting all. So when Whitley wrote the book, he got all these letters, and they're all housed by people who said they had the same experience, and they're all housed at this place called the Archive of the Impossible at Rice University. Mm-hmm. And the director of that is Jeffrey Kripal, Dr. Kripal, who's another interesting guy you might want to have on your show.
Here.
Great guy. And I actually, let's follow up after this. All these people I recommended, I'm personally in touch with. And if I say you should go on Danny's show, they'll probably go on your show.
Beautiful.
Yes.
Yeah, Jeffrey's amazing. I love him.
Yeah.
So back to your drones. I want to see your drones. You're a consultant for tech companies that are developing these underwater drones. Are these them?
Look for Ocean Glider, Steve.
Ocean Glider. Okay. What is the purpose of these drones? What's their function?
It's oceanography. So long endurance sensing of the ocean.
Okay.
And it's really relevant. So I had 120 of these, a big fleet, always out. That's one right there.
Oh, cool. Like torpedoes.
Yeah, that's what they look like. And see that big the antenna at the end? What they do is they do basically a zigzag up and down the water column. So change the buoyancy. You have two wings, so that allows forward propulsion with the seawater hydrodynamics. And once they make a down and up profile, the antenna pops on the surface and sends the signal up by SATCOM, and all gets fed into our ocean models, which are used by surface forces doing undersea warfare or anti-submarine warfare. So you have to know, just like weather and its impacts on radar and visual satellite communication imaging, the ocean has weather.
Yes.
And so, this you're a surfer. So currents, sea state, salinity differences all affect the speed of sound. So there are areas of the ocean that
these are all China ones. Can you find
his?
Just
find the American one. God, it's look at Naval Oceanographic.
What's
Office.
the name of your company again?
Look at the Naval Oceanographic Office.
Okay. Naval Oceanographic Office.
And that's funny. Ultimately, there's a story there. So when I had that fleet of ocean drones, and we had brought the head of the Navy, Chief of Naval Operations, John Richardson, to see them all, and he said, "Great, you should be doing this. We need to do more autonomy." A short time after that, 2015 or so, you might have heard the news. Maybe it was 2016 when China seized one of our ocean drones. Do you remember that?
I do remember.
Yes,
that.
and Trump even tweeted about it.
Yes.
I forgot what he tweeted and said, but that got the news, right? And what happened? It was interesting. I never got that's good. There you go. That's exactly what we're talking about. And so I never got a call saying by anybody in my chain of command, "What are you doing? Why'd you put your drone out there?" They wanted us to be doing that, so they actually screwed up. And we use that to basically highlight all their negative and malign activity in the Pacific. And so we got a lot of good press out of that. And they quickly returned it to us. And what we think is that it was a lower level commander of a ship who saw it surface and thought, "Oh, we should get this. This will be a prize. The leadership of the Communist Party will be so pleased." And of course, it was an international incident and made them look really bad. So it was.
And it was designed that way.
No, what I'm saying is I think they screwed up. I don't think they made China look bad, not us.
Right, but we intended for them to...
Not really.
Oh, okay.
No. So it was just doing its job.
I see.
We didn't throw it out. Now, partially because it was in the South China Sea, and that's an area that we want to know the ocean really well, because if Taiwan is going to get invaded, we're going to have to put our submarine forces and special operations forces there to keep that blockade from happening.
I read this lady, Annie Jacobson's book she's a whole book dedicated to DARPA and some of the stuff that they do and some of the research that they've been doing for a long time. And one of the things that they've been focusing on is creating super soldiers. And they've been doing these invasive brain implants since the 90s to try to do things like mitigate pain, like to try to reduce the amount of pain that soldiers can bear in combat, and things like hunger, try to get past hunger to survive longer without food, and all kinds of things. So it makes a lot of sense that they would be interested in something like this.
Yeah, and I mean, I've just read a book called We're Electric by Sally Adi, which is absolutely just illuminating in so many aspects. And in it, DARPA is mentioned so many times as being so critical in this advance of this research and technology. And of course, a lot of it is done for military purposes.
Right,
military communities are, they kind of got a need for it. The need for human augmentation in the military is a given. The military have a lot of people that are breaking through stress. So there's a piece of documentation called The Dawn of New Paradigm, joint piece of work by the Bundeswehr and DARPA. And essentially it's, identifies that we should be able to promote to our human biological limits. People aren't doing that. We're not effectively going to our full biological potential. Now, if you go beyond that, you talk about enhancement. So you can take people's eyes and laser them and get them to see in the dark. That's relatively easy, actually.
You get them to see in the dark?
Yeah, so you can just open up the rods so you can see better in the dark. You use the rods. Yeah. I mean, that means you can see in the dark, right? As good as many animals would.
I thought you meant give them night vision or something.
Yeah, night vision's
How cool would
process.
that be if they get DARPA? I bet you DARPA's tried to figure that out. Try to make people get night vision in their eyeballs.
Yeah, well, the key bit is, could you do it biologically?
Right, exactly. Exactly.
You can actually take a laser and open it all up quite a lot, perfectly safely, add more rods in that allow you to see in the dark, and you get better clarity at night. Night vision's come on a huge distance from when we first started. But it's hard work seeing in those pictures that you see on, especially if you're doing it over such a prolonged period of time, and then you've got all your different levels of information coming in. The overall load on your brain to interpret what's going on outside it is getting pretty a lot, and it's acknowledged as a significant challenge that they face. Is we're opening up all of these abilities to sense and surveil and learn and all this, and be told something by something else. And the human brain is amazingly adaptable, and it can survive. But whether it's neural,
LASIK,
so neural overload or whatever, everyone talks about now needing to take creating a neurological reserve, even just to cope, let alone to condition. And NATO's just released their statement on human enhancing technologies. the importance of being ethical about it, but importance of looking after the soldier, looking after the militaries, ensuring that their welfare is good, but also their conditioning suits what is going to be required of them, and getting them in a good physical state, good physical conditioning, but also augmenting their biological ability. And there is no reason why you can't do that, right? If you're using, we can voluntarily do what we can do, and individually and biologically, on a biological level, we're all quite different. We're all very, very similar, but the small differences between us manifest quite big in how we appear and how we behave, right?
Yes.
So, but using a technology, a non-invasive technology, to improve that conditioning, and it's no good in in the hands of a small set of people. It's effective when you make it available to the whole and improve them by 10%, 20%.
Right.
Quicker in rehabilitation, more conditioned to do their role. If you're having, a lot of back pain, or people falling from a particular condition, like a particular use in conditional to your role, so special forces community, lots of climbing and jumping, does that result in bad knees? Okay, well, we can see that, so we can condition that to become less of a preventable injury as such. And there was an interesting one we were brought with shelf people who worked in superstores, who were putting things on shelves of a certain weight. They're getting this particular type of problem, and it's costing the company a lot of money, and that could easily be treated by the right physiotherapy advice and a very easy and accessible technology. And the point I made, when I come across this technology, what really blew me away, and I must add that I'm not paid by this company at the moment. I represent them. I've become an ambassador for them, as I was invited to do, and I was just taken by the potential that it offers in so many applications.
I think the biohybrids, because when I say that thing they have done, right? So for anyone who isn't familiar with DARPA, right? It's the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, a mouthful.
They added the D later,
added the
right?
D for defense, but it is the most powerful, most secretive, most productive military agency in the world. And I kind of believe that before I wrote the book, most people had not heard of DARPA. I mean, I think, or at least when I was doing press for it was like shocking.
I think you're right about that.
So that's fascinating. And part of that has to do with DARPA likes the public perception of, that they do all these things for the good of humanity. And actually, we know from the declassified documents again, or actually this was not declassified. This was the statement by the first SecDef at the time, the SecDef at the time that the DARPA was created, Neil McElroy, an advertising executive who became a Secretary of Defense. He said, he went to Congress to get the funding, and he said, this agency is going to create the vast weapon systems of the future. That is what DARPA does. They are always 20 years ahead of anything that you or I know. So any technology that is like, what the hell was that I just saw and you're not supposed to have seen, that's DARPA. Right?
They were doing Neuralink in the 90s, right?
They are always doing things 20 years before you know about them, because they do what is called blue sky technology.
Blue sky
right?
research and technology, yes.
And they have to be ahead of the curve. They have to be,
amazing.
Right?
Is DARPA the only... when it comes to this kind of stuff, like innovating weapons for defense and national security, that's probably the only thing, the only apparatus that exists that's doing unlimited blue sky sort of research and development, right? Because they have unlimited money.
That we know of, but nothing surprises me anymore. And so when you find out there's some agency you've never heard of, it's like, oh, of course, right? Look at NRO, the National Reconnaissance Organization, right? National Reconnaissance Office, okay? NRO was created in 1961. No one knew it existed until 1993, when it was declassified. So they were involved in the first technology, the first satellite technology. So when I interviewed Dr. Bud Wheelon, who was the first director of science and technology at CIA, he was he identified himself as the mayor of Area 51 because he worked out there. And he built the first satellite called Corona. This is like back in the old days when it literally took wet film images, dropped the wet film, and the Lockheed pilots would retrieve the film as it floated. The canister of film floated down from space with a parachute attached to it. I'm not kidding, right? So this is NRO. They're in charge of everything above, right? And it was so classified, no one knew it existed for more than 30 years.
Is it true that NRO officers or people in the NRO have to be cleared through CIA, NASA, and something else?
That I don't know,
Okay.
but I do know they have their own classifications.
Air Force, that's
on
what it
things.
was.
Yeah, I mean they all kind of work with one another, for one another, you know. I mean, one of the guys I interview in Nuclear War, Richard Garwin, who designed the thermonuclear bomb, drew the plans for Edward Teller, right? When Edward Teller couldn't figure out how to actually make the bomb explode, Richard Garwin drew the design that allowed it to, right? He's 93. He's a major source for me in Nuclear War in my book, right? He was one of the founders of NRO. So they all work part and parcel. But the point of this, when you say, you know, is DARPA doing the most advanced technology? Maybe, but maybe there's another organization like NRO. I mean, people forget there are at least 17 intelligence agencies. It's not just CIA.
17?
17. I mean, Google them, look them up, right? That's why there's now a director of national intelligence. So there are, and I think that to stay ahead of the enemy, you know, air quotes or not air quotes, to stay ahead, the federal government is always playing not just chess, but like, you know, move the magic balls, right? And what's under what hat. And so things need to be hidden so that secrets can be kept. When the F-117 was retired, I went to the ceremony with Ed Lovick, the grandfather of stealth technology, right? And it was amazing. It was up there at Lockheed at Skunk Works, okay? And they made this announcement that was I just remember this one line, and I am paraphrasing, but they said, like, we created the F-117. It was like a 20-year project, you know, DARPA. And for 20 years, I think there were 10,000 people cleared on the program. This is what the guy was saying that was giving this speech. And he said, and no one leaked it. And then he said, oh, correction. It was actually 10,000 people cleared plus Tom Clancy.
DARPA.
Oh, yeah.
I'm reading the Pentagon Brain book right now.
Yeah.
And I'm about halfway through it.
Right.
I had these two guys on here who I think you had on your show as well about 6 months ago. One of the guys' name was Len Baer, and the other guy's name was he was a Harvard graduate who was recruited to a think tank to work on some stuff for DARPA. And they were talking about this directed energy stuff.
Yeah.
And this guy was claiming, you know, he had this Russian accent, which was funny.
Yeah.
And
yeah. Len?
Yeah, Len. And you know, he was claiming that he was being actively targeted by some sort of directed energy weapons that are coming from satellites or something. You know, not something that somebody's hanging out in front of his house, like pointing something at him, but it's some sort of like switch that's going off in his head.
Yes.
But he has no history of working with any government. He worked, I forgot what he did, but he was a
medical doctor.
He was a medical doctor, right. He was like a hormone
and
doctor.
he's a safety inspector for a food company now.
Right. So like there was no plausible reason why anyone would be targeting him. You talked to him.
Yeah.
What did you make of that stuff? And do you think that's anything that you think is what they think it is?
I have kind of a history on this issue. Because I'm out there as a CIA whistleblower, I attract a lot of people who have this complaint. Mm-hmm. I happened to be on contract with the American Psychological Association back in 2015. And we were at lunch one day, and I said, hey, guys, it was like a dozen psychologists. I said, guys, I got a question for you. Not a single day goes by that I don't get at least one email from somebody saying that the government is beaming some sort of waves at them, and it's painful, and it's making them, you know, vomit, and they have dizziness and whatever. Mm-hmm. And I said, does any of this make sense to you? And they looked at each other and started laughing. And one of them said, this is a very common form of mental illness. They have found in their studies that when people feel overwhelmed, their brains default to the most easily explained reason, and that is a dark outside force. Well, that's why everybody blames the CIA. Now people know more about DARPA. They're talking about DARPA. But then I talked to a New York Times reporter about this. And he said, so many people are quick to blame mental illness. But he said in his research, he found that there are some people who are just incredibly sensitive to the millions of waves that are flying through the air at any given time. Cell phones, radar guns, anything. If we could see the waves, we wouldn't even be able to see each other. There are so many of them. Right? And then I talked to Bill Binney, who used to be the number 4 at NSA. He was the chief technology officer at NSA. And I said, Bill, is this mental illness? Or is this like sensitivity to microwaves? Or what is this? And he said, I think that there's science behind it. I think that DARPA is doing something that we don't fully understand. He said, we do know that DARPA is working on these, not just next generation battlefield weapons, but 2 generations battlefield weapons. Lasers that will temporarily blind you so that we don't have to kill you, but it'll take you off the battlefield.
Crowd control.
Crowd control is a perfect example. Yes. He said, we don't know if it's DARPA that's doing this kind of thing. But, he said, I can tell you how you can tell who is insane and who's not. Ask them if the waves follow them when they travel. He said, there is no technology to beam this stuff from satellites. It's not possible.
No.
But he says, if it just happens when they're at a certain location, if it just happens when they're at home, or it just happens when they're at work, that's a problem. It's either a sensitivity or somebody's doing something to them. But if it happens like everywhere they go, or they went to their brother's house and it happened there, and then they checked into a hotel because they thought they were going crazy, it happened there. No, that's a mental illness.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's what this guy Len was saying. It was happening to him everywhere. So it happened to him on the airport on the way here.
Yeah. Well, but it doesn't happen to anybody else around him.
Right.
That doesn't make any sense.
Right.